We've got breaking news out of college football where Ole Miss's Lane Kiffin has announced he is leaving Oxford to become the next head coach of the LSU Tigers.
If you are a LSU fan or a Brian Kelly fan, you had something to be thankful for this weekend. And if you are an Ole Miss fan, I'm sorry, but you probably just had tears in your turkey sandwiches. Let's talk about it. Following up from the video that we posted last week about Brian Kelly and his lawsuit against LSU, you can go back to that video where I detailed every paragraph of that lawsuit that Brian Kelly's lawyers filed against LSU. All that back and forth over Thanksgiving break, that was taken care of. LSU sent a letter, said that Brian Kelly was released or fired without cause. That means that he is entitled to the $54 million buyout that is in his contract. Remember, there is an offset for that. Now Brian Kelly can go out and find his next head coaching job, or maybe it's an offensive coordinator job, whatever it may be. Maybe he finds a way to land, say, the Penn State job or some other job. Rumor was that he was in the running for Michigan State, but that position has already been filled. We are now able to move on to who the new head coach for LSU is going to be. What was frankly my surprise is that Lane Kiffin accepted the job. Lane Kiffin has had a pretty stellar career at Ole Miss. Set aside the fact that he did not do well in the 2020 year, but we all had to deal with COVID that year, and so all of athletics was just plain weird. After that, Lane Kiffin has shown that he can go into the transfer portal and find new players that will come in and immediately fill gaps in a roster. Expect him to do that at LSU. Expect him to find players, whether it be from Ole Miss or to take players from other schools to fill the gaps that will put LSU into college football playoff contention and championship contention very quickly. Lane Kiffin's goal for LSU, make no mistake, is to win national championships and to win national championships as soon as possible. Heisman winners, NFL draft picks, that's just icing on a cake. All that the LSU AD is going to be worried about, as well as the governor, since he has dipped his toe in this, and everybody else in the LSU ecosystem, all they're going to worry about are national championships from now on. Lane Kiffin said that he spoke to a couple of his mentors, most notably Nick Saban and Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll was his head coach and mentor whenever Lane was at USC as an assistant coach or offensive coordinator. And then we, of course, have Lane Kiffin being another product of the Nick Saban family tree, if you will, which, I mean, those branches go far and wide of coaches that are at all levels, whether it be Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, anyone in between. The other interesting fact is that Lane Kiffin's career has sort of run parallel to Steve Sarkisian. Ever since Steve Sarkisian was terminated at his USC position several years ago for apparently showing up intoxicated to practice and eventually a booster event or something like that. He left, went to rehab, and got sober, and was actually Lane Kiffin's inspiration to get sober. We've seen in documentaries and the Theo Vaughn podcast and the Pivot podcast where Lane Kiffin has attributed his sobriety to the lifestyle that he saw Sark living while they were at Alabama together. In my Brian Kelly video, I believed that it would be very difficult for LSU to attract top talent. It seems that the masses highly regard Lane Kiffin as being top talent. I believed it would be difficult for them to land that top talent with all this controversy, but boy, were we wrong. I do believe that the fact that LSU went in and said, hey, we are going to kill off this Brian Kelly issue, I believe that that contributed to it, because you have to consider the fact that even if Lane Kiffin himself were not considering it, his agent, who I don't know if it's still Jimmy Sexton, but any agent would be saying, look at this, because this is a liability that LSU football has. They are causing a stink over Brian Kelly's termination. will you be the next victim of this? But apparently LSU took care of that problem. The other thing that they did, they have allegedly given Lane Kiffin a budget of up to $25 million in NIL money. And that's going to be the money that he uses to plug those holes in the LSU system to get them into national championship contention sooner instead of later. Now, we have to discuss the obvious elephant in the room, the circumstances under which Lane Kiffin left. I believe that Lane Kiffin took his decision to leave very seriously. I believe that he put a lot of thought and prayer and consulted with his somewhat reconciled family about it. I have no reason to doubt that when he says it. He wanted to stay behind, allegedly, for his players and coach them to a national championship, which is a noble thing to do if he were doing it for the right reasons, which would be to see those men through the college football playoff as far as they could possibly go. And it sucks for the players who do not get to finish the season with the coach that brought them an 11-1 record. We also understand the Ole Miss athletic director's position per Lane Kiffin. I've been searching this up and down, left and right for the last 12 hours and have not seen a statement or anything like that from Ole Miss addressing this issue. So right now, all we have to go off of is the tarmac interview. Almost ironic that Lane Kiffin was fired on a tarmac by USC and is talking about his new job from the tarmac with Marty Smith. Right now, all that I know we have to go off of is his interview with Marty Smith on the tarmac, where he states that the athletic director said, look, I understand that you want to stay back and coach these players into the college football playoff, but you aren't going to be living here when you leave, and I am. And that is going to be a very bad look for us. There's also other people there have also been other pundits or people who have chimed in on this and said that means that Lane Kiffin, if he were to stay and coach players through the college football playoff, would have access to these players, talking to them about what they can do at LSU next season, and also advertising for the national audience and any 4- and 5-star recruits that are sophomores, juniors, seniors, etc., of what Kiffin is going to be taking to LSU next season. And Ole Miss was not going to give Lane Kiffin a outlet or a way to advertise the kind of football that he was going to be playing at LSU next season. What everybody would like to know is the why. I encounter the same thing in criminal defense cases. Jurors would like to know why isn't someone going to tell their side of the story? What is their side of the story? And we do have Kiffin's side of the story, but we also have what pundits believe the side of the story is, or confirmed reports about what his reasons for leaving were. I think the most important one, remember, consider the source. I'm just a criminal lawyer who enjoys college football. But if we look at LSU versus Texas versus Oklahoma versus Mississippi versus Alabama versus Florida, those other states have competing schools that you are recruiting against. Mississippi, it's Ole Miss or Mississippi State. Alabama, and you have Auburn. In Florida, goodness, you have the University of Florida, you have Florida State, you have Miami. All these teams are in, the top 25 polls every preseason. LSU is the only show in town, okay? Because if you have players that are deciding between LSU and ULM, LSU and Louisiana Tech, LSU and Lafayette, I don't know what the competition is unless you're talking about money, exposure, or playing time, because LSU is definitely going to have them beat on facilities. LSU is going to have them beat on national exposure. They're probably going to have them beat on the money too. The only thing that our smaller University of Louisiana systems can offer these other players is more playing time or a higher spot in the depth chart. If you're a 3-star, maybe you are looking at a Louisiana Tech or a ULM or a Grambling, as opposed to an LSU, so that way you can sit higher up in the depth chart or even have the chance to start as a freshman, which you are not going to get in the Lane Kiffin transfer portal era of football that he is bringing to Baton Rouge. I believe that there are two other important things, and it would be the mentors that Lane Kiffin has. We all know that Lane Kiffin was fired by Nick Saban, But Kiffin on the Pivot podcast said that, look, that is a relationship that is now repaired or is now very different, in the same way that your relationship with your parents probably sucks when you're living at home, but gets a whole lot better once you move out and have some distance. Same thing with Pete Carroll, his head coach whenever he was an assistant coach or an offensive coordinator at USC. Per reports that we have from various sources. First, Nick Saban told Kiffin that if he had stayed at LSU, he would have won more national championships. Allegedly, due to the fact that recruiting is so much easier in the state of Louisiana because your one job is don't screw it up. And then Pete Carroll, who said he pulled the what your father would do. Remember, Lane Kiffin's father, who actually coached with him up until his death recently, was considered a defensive mastermind in the NFL. Whether or not he borrowed his defensive system from the Pittsburgh Steelers steel curtain defense, that is debatable, but there is no doubt that I believe the Tampa 2 is what he is attributed with creating. And Pete Carroll pulled the card and said that, Lane, if your dad was alive today, he would say, take the LSU job. And so we have Lane Kiffin and LSU, $25 million NIL budget, and he is already working hard to put his staff in place. If you are an LSU fan, you should be very excited, and you should be looking forward to next season's football. You should be looking forward to National Signing Day. You should be looking forward to when the transfer portal opens and closes and who's going where. What you should not be looking forward to is what happens when Alabama has a less than stellar season and DeBoer is the one that's on the hot seat. Do not be excited when Texas has a less than stellar season and Sarkisian is on the hot seat. Do not be excited when USC, the only team that Lane Kiffin would have allegedly left Tennessee for, is on the hot seat and they're looking for a new coach. Because then what is the one school that Lane Kiffin would have left LSU for? Is it Texas? They have more money. They have a deeper alumni base. They have deeper pockets. Is USC a better program? That's where Lane's ex-wife was at until just this last year, I believe, with their son. What if that ex-wife says that, hey, we really should go back to Southern California a year or two from now? Or what if another head coaching position becomes open? Lane Kiffin was unceremoniously fired, as the kids would say, put on blast for the job that he did with Oakland by Al Davis. So much to the point that he brought an overhead projector and detailed all the things about why Lane Kiffin was getting fired. What if Lane Kiffin says, I'm ready to go to the next level and take the job with fill in the blank NFL team? Don't be surprised, because Lane Kiffin has shown that he is willing to take the risk and see if the grass is greener on the other side. And you can make of that what you will. Maybe he should have been content with Ole Miss. If he had stayed with that program, he could have a statue in front of that stadium. But instead, he's going to a place where, frankly, he's going to be another footnote among the greats. But maybe while the NIL and the NCAA and this transfer portal situation is more or less the wild, wild west, maybe Lane Kiffin strings together roster after roster of superstars that consistently compete for natties. For LSU fans, I can only hope that's true. So, welcome to the next era of college football. I'm looking forward to next season. I'm looking forward to see how Ole Miss does in what we assume will be their appearance in the college football playoff. I'm looking forward to see what kind of competition Lane is going to bring from the Bayou to Kirby Smart in Georgia, Sark in Texas, and against his former defensive coordinator in Oxford, Mississippi next year. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment below, and if this interests you, I'll make more videos about my reaction and opinion on college football and sports in general. But if you want videos about criminal defense and criminal law, especially in the state of Louisiana, make sure that you check out our other videos on the channel.